And the winner is...
And the Oscar goes to...
And the Oscar goes to...
The first months of the year have finally wrapped up, and so have the nominations for Oscars 96.
My year of dicks.
They were huge duds and absolute standouts, and yet we have Jimmy Kimmel for another year. This is not a joke. Can I borrow this really quick? It says we have him. We have him this year.
Cringe.
I should have had plenty of time to watch these movies, but life throws a bit of shakeups here and there, so it's better late than never, I suppose. Since we're days away from the inevitable, it's time to bring our popcorn bowls out and discuss all the nominees for Best Picture. This really needs some butter. The salt level's nice. For this, we're bringing out the tier list to decide, is this film worth your time or a total crime to your time? Much like with A Case of Greenbrook, how'd that turn out, Academy? We'll also be using this list later to determine who will win the big award. My gut says there's no way in hell that Maestro is winning, but we'll need to discuss our opinions on the films first. Cue that VA footage or whatnot. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing right now. I'm just screaming into the mic. Ah! Kicking things off here is Cord Jefferson's American Fiction, quite possibly the story of my life. We follow Black author Monk Ellison, who is having trouble trying to get a hit novel out of the water. He is also fed up with the constant offensive stereotypes being utilized in writing. But it's after one day studying a new talent and her work that he writes one of these stereotypical novels to prove his point. But he doesn't want this to be about him, so he chooses to pen it under an alias. Though very raw and jarring, he unexpectedly sees a huge success in this book, yet he doesn't want it to tarnish his image. Each cast member had strong performances, especially from Sterling K. Brown as Monk's brother Clifford. Jeffrey Wright gives a commanding performance as Monk, perfectly executing the deadpan humor.
Are those human remains? You guys have a permit for that?
Shut up, Philip.
Liv? You don't talk to me like that.
You want me to beat your ass?
I'm just...
Get out of here, Philip. I will eat your sweater vest for dinner. Always been a douche.
It is easily my favorite screenplay of all the nominees, but while Poor Things had a ridiculous premise attached to it, American Fiction keeps itself in check with heartbreaking and wholesome moments tied to its family. Its ending is undeniably great, and I can't recommend it enough. Ah, the recipient of the Palme d'Or. It used to mean we were in a tree, goddammit. Since the release of Parasite, it's kind of been all over the place when it comes to the Cannes Film Festival picking out winners. Triangle of Sadness was the previous recipient, followed by Titan, and... oh yeah, there was no festival then. But it looks like we are back to a banger with Justine Triet's Anatomy of a Fall. We follow Sandra Voiter, an author and mother who was informed by her son Daniel that her husband cracked his head. An investigation comes to fruition in which Sandra and her lawyer try to find the cause of his death, but she may have to defend herself on the stand as some scrutiny is headed her way. I wasn't able to watch the whole movie in one sitting, but when I finished it, it was a slow yet engaging burn. Sandra Hula gives an emotional performance as Daniel's mother Sandra. She makes it feel like this case is actually happening in the real world and that we're all watching the coverage. It has a unique charm to it that I don't quite see in dramas these days, but it's definitely a film I'd like to revisit at some point so I can learn more about the situation Hulu was in. Wish there was a little bit more, but it makes it to great tier.
Hey, Barbie.
The Barbie movie was directed by Greta Gerwig alongside a screenplay from Gerwig and her husband, Noah Baumbach. This is her first Best Picture nod since the 2019 adaptation of Little Women. In the film, we follow stereotypical Barbie in her usual routine of keeping energy high in Barbie Land. This can be from saying good morning to her neighbor Barbies and greeting some of the Kens at the beach. But it is later that a fateful moment changes her identity and begins to fall apart. She then turns to an unlikely source that could get her back to the state of normalcy and bring joy back to Barbie Land. It's a mouthful of a plot, but I mean, hey, I'm in for it. I completely slept on this film for some obvious reasons, but now that I've watched it, I understand where the hype went. The film is full of energy, and I can see why a lot of audiences preferred to watch this over Oppenheimer. That's not to say the latter is bad, or the rivalry to double feature meme wasn't justified. When something like Barbie comes out, it pulls general audiences in versus some audiences who are only into historical dramas. When it's an experience that can entice anyone's interest regardless of themes, it's truly one of a kind. Understandably, Margot Robbie doesn't feel like the actress we needed to play the lead role, but you know what? I don't fucking care, because she was still a sensation amongst the other amazing Barbies and Kens alike. She's come far since her roles in I, Tonya and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Personally, I don't have much else to say about this film, but if I did, then it's more of that feel-good vibe like with last year's frontrunner Top Gun Maverick. Sure, there's themes rolled into play that not everyone's going to get, but it's not the entire experience. Like I said a minute ago, it's full of creative energy that you don't see in Oscar nominees often. While it doesn't have the merits to win the big award, it's still an achievement that it made the nominations list.
Whose land is this? My land.
Killers of the Flower Moon is the latest film from director Martin Scorsese and his first film since 2019's The Irishman. Based on the novel by David Gran, it stars Lily Gladstone as Molly Burkhart, the wife of her estranged husband Ernest, played by Leonardo DiCaprio. In it, we follow Ernest, who goes to Osage Country to start a new life under the influence of his uncle William King Hale. But it is before and during this time a string of murders begin to unfold, as Molly and her tribe look to get an investigation for these ongoing assaults. I also have to go off the record to say that the locations for filming were beautiful and helped represent the era they lived in. Like with some of Scorsese's previous works, most of the cast performed excellently in their roles, but it is Lily Gladstone's performance that sets the grim tone very well. It has one of my favorite overall casts of all the nominees for Best Picture. The only glaring issues I personally have with the film would be its visual effects. Some would be effortless in lighting and practicality, and some would feel more plastic than others. And the runtime could be cut down another 15 minutes, but it isn't the end of the world to sit through those extra minutes. Overall, the experience is gut-wrenching and one of Scorsese's finest works. It's a rarity to see one of these stories make it onto the silver screen, so give it a watch in your own time.
Hello, I'm Lenny.
Hello, Felicia.
Maestro is the recent directorial effort from actor and filmmaker Bradley Cooper. This is his first Oscar-nominated work since A Star is Born and is produced by Scorsese and Steven Spielberg, amongst many others. The film is a biographical adaptation of the life of legendary musician and composer Leonard Bernstein. It goes through how he got his rise to stardom, meeting the love of his life, the various works he's written. We see it. I'm sure some of you watching this have seen or heard music from West Side Story, even if you only know the film adaptations. The strongest part of the entire film is the soundtrack and makeup. It made sense that the score would be made up of Bernstein's familiar tunes. There were genuine moments in the film that it made it look like if Cooper had aged or if it was just him playing Bernstein. But that's the nicest compliment I will give Maestro, as it sadly goes downhill from here. It's about as generic and balls to the wall as can be, but better than adapting a Wikipedia article into a full-length movie. The biggest complaints I have of this film would stem from the pacing. There were times when an emotional moment felt like it was going on much longer than it needed to. Even though the film is chugging away at its less than 2-hour runtime, it still doesn't excuse this fact from the equation. Another would have to be from Carey Mulligan's performance. While she was exceptional in her role, some scenes just left a bad taste in my mouth when I'm supposed to be having a sense of sadness for the character. It instead makes those moments more lifeless than it seems. And while that may have been the intention as the film went on, it doesn't leave a lasting mark for long. Maestro is more of a disappointment than an inherently bad piece of film in music history. It may have had its strong moments, but they were already fleeting before it began. It should come as no surprise this movie was going to be nominated. Like 13 nominations nominated. And since most of everyone has seen Oppenheimer, or at least heard about it, I won't go deep into discussing the plot. But for those of you who have never heard of the movie, it follows the life of J. Robert Oppenheimer to the highlights of his career, especially with the Manhattan Project developing the atomic bomb. The practical effects and use of sound was very unique and stands on top of all the nominees this year for visual effects. Much like the real Oppenheimer, Cillian Murphy gives a haunting performance in one of his best roles in a long time. I'd argue that the years spent with Christopher Nolan on his films were training for this once-in-a-lifetime role. And while they had star-studded cast bringing out equally enticing performances like Robert Downey Jr., they don't quite stick the landing than with Killers of the Flower Moon. But it's undeniable the amount of effort Nolan has put into his work, and it wouldn't be surprised if it does take the gold.
What do you want from theory alone?
0 would be nice.
There's a word in Korean, inyeon. It means providence or fate.
This one fell completely under my radar as I was working on some YouTube shorts and reaction content at this time. It was inevitable that we'd get one romance for the list of nominees, but I will say I did enjoy it. Past Lives follows a friendship between Na Young and Hae Sung, who both go their separate ways when Young and her family move to the States. Many years later, a now married Young finally gets the chance to meet Sung for a long week after the last time that they spoke. The soundtrack for this film is definitely one of the better ones I've heard from all the nominees. It helps bring the emotional transitions forward when our lead characters move on from their old lives to start their new ones. The cinematography from DOP Shabir Kirsner is beautiful to say the least, especially the full shots of the Seoul and New York skylines. It definitely felt like there was a lot of love that went into this, and I can feel that vibe in certain places of the film. It was an overall comforting piece, almost as if you were coming out of a deep meditation.
Bella, this is Mr. McCandles.
Hello, Bella.
Poor Things is the latest feature from director Yorgo Lanthimos. Some of his recent works include The Favorite, The Lobster, and Killing of a Sacred Deer. Based on the novel by Alasdair Gray, the film follows a woman brought back to life by an unusual mad scientist. She decides to go off and explore the world around her while her adoptive father continues his work. It is on that journey that she meets lawyer Duncan Wedderburn, who decides to help accomplish her goals. It is set in parts of Europe and shot beautifully with unique sets to the story. Mark Ruffalo's performance was enticing and kind of echoes the brilliance of Marlon Brando's role in The Streetcar Named Desire. The tour de force of this whole film is unequivocally Emma Stone's performance as Bella. It's very much a mix between a coming of age and a dark comedy. For every time I felt like I was grossed out, it surprised me with its witty humor. It's very jarring, but all in the name of good fun. Its soundtrack was equally as weird and fascinating as the film and helped elevate it in some cases. I loved the makeup for Willem Dafoe's character Dr. Baxter. It was well balanced for the most part, and those 2 hours and 20 minutes went almost as quickly as it arrived.
Sir, I don't understand.
That's glaringly apparent.
I can't fail this class.
Oh, don't sell yourself short, Mr. Coates. I truly believe that you can.
Now, of course, comes The Holdovers, which I've already seen a couple months ago. Hell, it was in my top 5 films of the year video. If you do want to watch that review, click the video on the top right now, but otherwise I'll give a brief summary to keep this video moving. A group of students have nowhere to go for the holiday season, and so they're stuck with their history professor, Mr. Hunnam. One of them forms an unlikely bond with their teacher, and their relationship blossoms throughout the film. Most of the cast did their best in each role, but it is in the performances of Davina Joy Randolph and Paul Giamatti that make this film truly special. Dominic Sessa, who had his first on-screen role here, also gave an equally engaging performance as Angus Tully, beautifully capturing the adolescence of his character. It was a privilege to see this as the last film I watched at Montclair, and it is sure to be a certified holiday classic for eons. This was one of those movies I completely missed out on at Montclair Film, the other being Robot Dreams. World War II dramas have been done to death over the past 50 years, but there always comes some exceptions that stand out. The Zone of Interest is sort of a family film in theme, yet it feels much different in tone. We follow Nazi commander Rudolf Höss living about with his family on the Auschwitz site. It's through this time that he and his wife get the drive for a good dream life, especially with the installation of a garden and pool so that his family can thrive in the coming years. The film doesn't come across as a quick burn, but more as like a slow, painful death. This comes especially from the soundtrack or lack thereof to enhance the experience. It makes the scene transitions feel unnerving, as if you were the millions of Jewish people slaughtered. It's very confusing upon the first watch, but I feel like I'd be confident on understanding what that'd be on a second viewing. It's a unique piece of art, but I wouldn't go out to say that this is worthy of the Oscar. When it comes to all the nominees, a couple take home awards for their individual efforts. Barbie had the best production design, Past Lives had the most beautiful score, Killers of the Flower Moon had the best cast and career highlight from Lily Gladstone, Maestro had the best makeup and hairstyle as well as sound, Oppenheimer had the best editing and visual effects, American Fiction had the best overall screenplay, and Poor Things has the best direction and leading performance from Emma Stone, bordering on career best to say the least. But now it's time to discuss who will win this coveted award. Will it be thrown in the weight of the Barbenheimer crowd? Or could we see something bold and extraordinary taken home, much like with American Fiction and Poor Things? Now, while these are my picks for Sunday evening, you can of course share your opinions in the comments below. Just make sure you keep it all civilized in there. I don't want to see any fighting between the Barbenheimer crowd. And with that out of the way, let's begin deciding who is worthy of Best Picture. Alright, so I'm going to start with the the ones that I didn't really quite enjoy as much, or I really didn't enjoy at all. Which would be Maestro and The Zone of Interest. Like, these were both films that, you know, had a little bit of intrigue, but like they just didn't quite make that landing, or like they were just flat out boring. I definitely will say that Maestro is not anywhere close to winning for this. I could theoretically see a chance for Zone of Interest, but I don't think it's going to be, you know, the top dog, if you will. So I'll throw that into the least likely category. Another film I don't think is going to, you know, get this award. It'd be nice, but I don't think it's going to happen. It's going to be Past Lives. It's going to go right into least likely territory. It's nice it got a nomination, but there's still a lot of bigger fish we're dealing with here. When it comes to the Barbie movie, it's more like on the high end of the least likely. It's not going to actually win the award, but it's very close to being part of the like list. I think for now, I'm just going to leave it on likely. It's right there, split in between, like at the tail end of likely to least likely at the beginning. So, you know, there's a chance, but I don't see it happening. Maybe, you know, in a couple awards like supporting actress and like the best production design, like I mentioned. Aside from the entertainment value, I don't really see a whole lot of investment being put into, you know, Best Picture from the Academy voters. The Holdovers feels like one of those movies where it feels good for its genre. It might actually have a chance of winning. And that'd be pretty cool if it did make a win because, you know, this was a pretty special movie. So for now, I'm going to leave it into likely. It's right there above Barbie. Oppenheimer seems like a very prime pick where a lot of Academy voters are going to keep their eyes on and maybe possibly give this the Best Picture win to. So it wouldn't be too surprising that this does win. So I'm going to leave this right there at most likely. It already has like a whole lot going for it. And, you know, mad props to Christopher Nolan for making an excellent movie. And, you know, if I had a whole lot more money, I would probably go out, buy as much physical media as I possibly can, and especially get a 4K Blu-ray of Oppenheimer whenever that happens. Another equally interesting and career achievement would be, of course, Killers of the Flower Moon. Since the last film I watched, which was The Irishman from Scorsese, it really feels like, you know, it's like he's really just mastered himself as a director after all these years. And, you know, to see it in this recent work is just nothing short of extraordinary. So I think it will also be a front runner for Best Picture right here. I don't think it's going to be the film to win the award, but it wouldn't be a bad pick. Anatomy of a Fall was an interesting piece of media, to say the least. I still feel like with a second rewatch, I probably would understand the film a little bit more. But, you know, as it stands right now, it's on the lower end of the likely scale for me. Like, it feels it could be slightly higher than Barbie, but I think for now, it's just going to stay right there at the tail end of likely. Kind of ironic considering that I just mentioned that Barbie is on the tail end of likely to win Best Picture. But, you know, we're just trying to figure out, well, who's going to win. And Anatomy of a Fall, again, it'd be okay. I wouldn't, you know, hate the decision, but it feels like it would be a whole lot better to see a different movie, you know, win Best Picture of the bunch. It's like we see with Oppenheimer and Killers of the Flower Moon. Now it comes to these last two, American Fiction and Poor Things. These are both amazing films on their respective scale. American Fiction has a very raw creative energy that I don't quite see with Poor Things, but that's not, of course, to say that Poor Things was necessarily bad. You know, Poor Things has just a lot going toward it. American Fiction feels like the toss-up that we never thought we needed, and I never personally thought that I needed, so I say this should be right there. Like these two movies, Poor Things and American Fiction, they are squared, tie for tie, on should win. I don't care which one of those two wins, I'm happy. But those are the two right there that should win. These are the films right here, you know, that should win. Like I mentioned, you of course can place your opinions in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts of who you might possibly think would win. So trust me. And that concludes all the Best Picture nominees I have to talk about. It's been the hardest category this year because some of the films are actually really great. But of course, the bell's calling. And when I say bell, I mean the DVR or live TV if you're watching on Hulu or something. If you do want to see me watch the entirety of the Oscars, I'm going to be doing a stream at 6 o'clock where I do some meme games beforehand before we get into Kimmel jokes for 3.5 hours. It's going to be an interesting night all the way, and my only source is to trust me.